Rand Paul crisscrossing southern Kentucky today, a day ahead of a key decision that could set up a different kind of election in next year's U.S. presidential race in Kentucky.
As the high school football season kicks off tonight, some lawmakers are trying to make sure student safety is a priority. How a new bill aims to protect students from concussions.
He was the mastermind of a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, and he pulled it off. How you can avoid being a victim of a similar scam coming up.
Tracking, alerting, protecting. This is WKYT News at 5:30.
Good afternoon. Should Kentucky's junior senator be allowed to run for president and re-election to the Senate all in the same year?
Senator Rand Paul wants his name on both ballots, and a key decision allowing him to do just that could come soon. Kentucky's Republican Central Committee will meet tomorrow morning in Frankfort to discuss setting up a caucus for next year. Phil Pendleton tells us what Senator Paul had to say about the process in our top story at 5:30.
Kentucky's Republican Party will have their Central Committee meeting at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Their decision could open up the door for Rand Paul to be on two separate ballots for two separate elections.
Give him a good Laurel County welcome.
Rand Paul told a room full of adults and kids that he wants a new tax code and smaller government during a stop sponsored by the local Chamber of Commerce in London.
Just an argument for realizing that if government gets too big, you're having to give up your liberty or your taxes or your labor to support it.
He also says a Republican president will help solve many of those problems. Right now, he's in a crowded field for that nominee, but he also wants to stay in the re-election race for his U.S. Senate seat. A special election early next year for voters to choose their nominee is what Paul wants.
The Democrats in the state want to have it another way, but the way we've decided to be able to try to figure out a solution is by having our own caucus. It was voted unanimously by the Executive Committee in the spring, and I think we'll pass on Saturday.
A caucus could cost near $500,000. Paul has pledged that most will be covered and stopped short of saying that his campaign would pay the full price.
Many states actually collect some money on the day of the election just by passing a bag and asking people for $1 or $2. If you have 100,000 people vote and they put $1 or $2 in a bag, you actually wind up with enough money to pay for something like this.
If Rand Paul were to lose the nomination for president, he then could run for his U.S. Senate seat in May. In Laurel County, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
And despite his presidential run, Senator Paul says he has still made 99% of his votes on the U.S. Senate floor and is traveling frequently around the state to represent Kentucky. If the Republican Party Central Committee decides tomorrow to have a caucus in March, it means that Kentucky Republicans would decide the Republican delegates who would be going to the Republican National Convention for the presidential nomination. And there would still be a Republican primary in May for the Senate and congressional seats that are up for election next year.
Depending on who gets the most support at the caucus, they would get the most delegates to the Republican National Convention. It's a way of bypassing the primary so that Senator Paul can be in the primary and therefore not on the ballot twice in his bid to run for re-election to his Senate seat.
Again, the Republican Party Central Committee will make a decision about the caucus tomorrow morning.
A Central Kentucky puppy found starving outside an apartment complex has a new home tonight. Our county-by-county coverage at 5:30 begins in Jessamine County. The pup, now named Sophia, gained 15 pounds after spending 24 days at the shelter. The shelter tells us that Sophia's new family has been stopping by the shelter every day, bringing her presents. Last week, investigators charged Eugene Gino Floyd with second-degree animal cruelty. They say Floyd told them he was busy with work and forgot to feed the dog, so he turned her loose, hoping someone would find her. In Bell County, a pregame prayer will kick off tonight's high school football game. In 2011, pregame prayers at Bell County high school football games were stopped after a complaint by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. This week, a Christian group at the school filed a petition with the school board for prayer to be included in pregame rituals again, and the board approved the group's request.
The high school football season kicking off with some great weather tonight. We're tracking some more fall-like temperatures. Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey has a look at your Friday night forecast. Chris?
Yeah, about as good as we can get. Middle of August out there tonight, Sam. Temperatures are into the 70s yet again this afternoon. A lot of sunshine to boot. Low humidity's gorgeous. Little look outside. Let's start things out. Capital city of Frankfort, 78 and sun. the little bit of cloud cover we had earlier in the day beginning to go by the wayside. We have our Skycam trained out back here behind Defender, where our crews just took off in Sky First, heading out to cover high school football action across the region. I was hoping to catch that on the live Skycam. Looking at a little bit of cloud cover across parts of central and eastern Kentucky. High, thin clouds that are out there. Nothing that will produce any kind of precipitation, giving our skyline a little bit of flavoring. For folks who are out this evening, it's going to feel like fall yet again as we go into the start of the weekend. We've got another cold front that will blow into town by the end of the weekend. Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, could be talking about some scattered storms with that. And when I come back here in about 10 minutes, guys, we're going to track another blast of cool air that may give us some of the coolest temperatures we've had around here since springtime. And this morning was pretty darn cool. I think we'll get a little cooler than that into next week. We'll run down the numbers for you in, again, less than 10 minutes.
And with the kickoff of the high school football season, the issue of safety is at the forefront. Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer followed up with one U.S. senator who's been pushing for legislation that would keep your son or daughter safer on the field.
It's estimated that over 100,000 students playing high school sports suffer concussions every year. Many go unreported. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin is working to bring that number down using a little inspiration from an old hobby. As an old football player himself, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin knows how important it is to stay safe in the game.
Err on the side of safety, err on the side of caution.
That's why he's continuing to push for legislation called the Protecting Student Athletes from Concussions Act. Durbin says the act would strengthen K-12 schools' procedures for preventing, detecting, and treating student athletes who suffer concussions while competing.
I visited a high school in Chicago not long ago and met with the football team, and it was a great day. And it wasn't more than 2 weeks later that there was a serious injury of one of those same players in just a routine high school football game, and the poor young man went into a coma.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates nearly 3.8 million incidences of sport-related concussions occur every year. Durbin's legislation includes a policy that would require students who are suspected of having a concussion to stay out of the game. The bill would also force schools to notify a student's parents of an injury and obtain a written release from a healthcare professional before the student can return to play. Durbin says the point is to mandate a national when-in-doubt, sit-it-out policy.
Make sure they're safe another day for another game.
Senator Durbin tried to get this legislation in the recently passed education bill. It didn't make it in, but he was able to make sure that the bill addresses student athletic safety. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
All states would have 5 years from the bill's enactment to issue guidance to schools about concussion plans. When Kentucky high school football players take the field tonight, you'll see that many of them are wearing new helmets. Last fall, a WKYT investigation found 5 Kentucky schools used helmets that were rated less than good by the 5-star rating system created by a Virginia Tech professor. Scott County had 81 2-star helmets. Rowan County had 6 helmets with less than 3 stars of ratings. But since our investigation, Rowan County High School has bought 15 new 5-star helmets. Scott County replaced all of their helmets with 5-star ones. Fayette County had 3 schools, Dunbar, Tates Creek, and Bryan Station, with less than good helmets. Records show that all 3 still have those helmets in their inventories.
Animals and poultry are a major staple at the Kentucky State Fair, but for the first time, state officials are not allowing out-of-state birds at the fair. The Commonwealth currently has a ban on out-of-state poultry coming into the state because of the bird flu outbreak. The Office of the State Veterinarian says over 50 million chickens and turkeys have been euthanized in other states. No poultry in Kentucky has tested positive for bird flu so far, but state officials don't want to take any chances.
The vet's out here doing the checks, and everyone that I've seen come in, they're all clean, the cages are clean, so I'm not worried.
There are only 2 confirmed cases of bird flu in Kentucky. The wild birds were found dead, but veterinarians say they did die from the virus.
How can you tell if an investment advisor might be leading you down a path that makes him rich and you poor? We have a story that comes with an important warning to prevent you from losing your life savings.
Unfortunately, they invested with the wrong guy.
Clients trusted financial planner Sean Meadows would invest their money wisely. Instead, he swindled more than 50 people out of almost $13 million.
Mr. Meadows worked for a name brand investment firm as a financial advisor. At some point, he had his clientele and decided that he wanted to go out on his own, and he took those clients with him.
Once he had his own company, he would have clients convert their annuities into annuities he was selling and controlling. Meadows also promised clients a 10% rate of return if they took money out of their retirement accounts and invested with him. The financial advice and guidance stopped at one point, and he started using their money for his personal gain.
Gambling addiction seemed to get the better of him, and then he needed more and more and more money to feed that addiction.
Inspectors say Meadows operated a classic Ponzi scheme, using money from new investors to make payments to existing investors. Where did the money go? Rolex watches, a boat, a 1968 Camaro, various properties, casinos, and more than $100,000 in adult entertainment in Las Vegas. Inspectors say promises of high rates of returns are always a red flag.
If he says he can get you X%, whatever it is, and the industry typically is returning half of that or a third of that, you have to stop and think and do the homework.
Sean Meadows was sentenced to 25 years in prison in June.
They are making sure all of their students have access to dental care. Still ahead on WKYT News at 5:30. How Morehead State University students can go to the dentist even if they don't have insurance.
I'm Bill Bryant. Senator Rand Paul making his case for a Republican presidential caucus next year. And the head of the state's community college system talks about trying to keep tuition low while facing cuts. The bottom line is ahead.